Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast, where we highlight minority business owners and founders, and we use this platform to shed light on their entrepreneur journey. How's everybody doing today on this special Friday, first Friday of the month of March? I'm excited to have everybody tuning in. We're going to give folks a few minutes to tune in. We got a very special guest. As you guys know, that this season of the Beyond Normal podcast is sponsored by our partners, Brewery. Brooke, she is the founder of Brewery. As you guys know, who've been following the podcast, we spent some time for this season making sure we curated this special list of entrepreneurs for you guys. We have a very special guest with us today. But before we get into that, I want to make sure just from an industry perspective, we're going to be talking adult beverages. So if you guys are tuning in, I got my adult beverage here in a little red cup. We're not going to put the different brands on the screen, right? Because we want to make sure that we put the spotlight on Danii and her business here, Island to Island Brewery. But very excited to have Danii on as a guest for us today. Give me 1 second here. Running into a little bit of a technical difficulty. You gotta love technology. Give me 1 second. All right, we're back up and going. So Danii, appreciate you coming on and joining us today. Danii, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Got it. And so just to give you guys a little bit of background, again, we're excited to have Danii on the show. Danii Oliver, she's the founder of Island to Island Brewery, amongst other things, which we'll definitely dive into. But it's Island to Island Brewery is a full spectrum beverage production, science, research, and cultural conservation facility on the Kiddo Family Ranch in Texas. So we actually got a little bit of background. I know Danii's going to share around the roots and in the beginning of the brewery there as well. And she's got a phase 2, which is going to be a combined brewery, fermentory, and juicery manufacturing facility, which some of that started in the roots where she's going to dive into it. But now that is located in Texas. Thanks for being on the show, Danii.
Thanks for having me.
And we're going to hop right into the questions because I know you got a lot to share with the folks. So could you start out just giving folks a little bit of background around you, leading up to you starting the Island to Island Brewery, amongst the other things that you're in as well?
So I guess a little bit about myself. When I got started with all this, I was fat. I'm fat again, but I was fat. I was sick. The food industry was just not working for me. Medical industry wasn't working for me. So I decided to make a change, and I took that change into my hands. And I started to educate myself on what the body actually needed to function and to exist and to heal itself. And I started to make changes, and those changes took hold very rapidly. And my family and friends took notice, and they wanted what I was doing. And it required me to organize myself and get my information together so that I can both teach and offer products to them. And my family and friends basically were coming at me from around the world because I have family internationally. So it required me to put everything together and focus and write a business plan and say, this is how I will get products to you. And I started looking for spaces and all of that. And as I made changes, people started treating me differently. And part of how people were treating me was calling me antisocial. They were like, you can't go out with us because you can't eat anything, or we won't invite you out to drink because you can't drink anything. And I began to notice that like a lot of these things were set in our society where if you were a certain culture, if you were a certain gender, if you were a certain age, if you ate a certain way, there was a place for you. Like you weren't welcomed everywhere or anywhere. It was, this is where the vegans go. This is where the meat eaters go. This is where the Irish go. This is where the Jamaicans go. And that for me was crazy. Like it did not support my mental health. It did not support my social health. And I was just trying to be a good business owner, providing access to resources to people. And so I just decided to create a space that would intentionally focus on inclusivity and focus on being a space for all people on purpose. Um, so if you were pregnant and you wanted to go out, you can bring your partner and your children and your dog and your mother and your father with you. And there was something for everyone because you were all just drinking out of a glass. No matter what was in your glass, no one was going to judge you. So, as a pregnant woman, if you needed to have something non alcoholic and bubbly, I had craft made kombucha for you that I made on site. If you were a dude who wanted a beer, then there was a craft beer that I made for you on site. If you were, an older woman who wanted a cocktail, but you wanted all natural ingredients, we had smoothies that were spiked with rum or vodka for you. If you were a child and you wanted something to drink, we had fresh pressed juice for the kids. And of course, it wasn't designed for any in particular person. It's just an example of being able to go out with your family, be out in the world, be out in society, and be able to sit down and celebrate life together and not feel like, well, I got to go to this place because I got an issue, or I got to go to that place because I got another issue. And so we took what business as a whole was seeing as issues with people, and we made it things to celebrate.
I love that explanation there. You touched on something there. When I think about drinking with my friends, like you said, there's a community there. I think around a lot of the breweries, even here in my region of the country. You talk about, I'm seeing things now like yoga. I'm seeing like dog parks. There's this whole experience that goes into it, and everybody should be able to partake in that. When I think of like football Sunday, whatever the day is, the occasion where we're drinking something, everybody deserves to have something in their red cup. And so it was amazing that you saw that opportunity, and that's got to be a big task. So I definitely appreciate you putting the time in there to make an inclusive environment when it comes to drinking, because it's not always that way, for sure. So I am just on a roll today with these technical difficulties. But in terms of the experience that you had, you started things you started things in New York, and you just talked through that experience, that initial aha, like, hey, here's the experience I want to set up for people. Talk a little bit around initially setting up your business in New York, and how that experience in particular was for you.
Oh, it was extremely difficult. It was not easy at all. You name an ism, and I faced it on that road to opening day. From sexism to ageism to racism. I dealt with landlords who didn't want to shake my hand just because I look the way I look. I dealt with contractors who didn't want to do work for me because I look the way I look. Like, one guy came in, this snaggletooth dude, never forget him. I started painting the walls, and I was doing fine, but then I started suffering heat stroke. And so I spoke to my partner, and I'm like, yo, I think we need to pay somebody to do this. I'd been painting rooms for like ever, so I felt like I could do it, no problem. But with the heat stroke and the stress, I just said, let me pay someone to take care of this, because we couldn't get a contractor. They wouldn't take me seriously. So we basically had to do all the work ourselves for build out. So when it got to the point of needing help with the painting, we called in a dude. He inspected the place, looked around, and then started talking to my partner and was like, who did this? You let her do that? Ha ha ha. And basically, he didn't even want to talk to me. He wouldn't look at me. He was insulting me to my partner. And my partner is sitting there looking at him like, dude, she's the boss. She's the one who's going to pay you. She's cutting a check, not me. What are you talking to me for? Like, I'm just married to her. That don't mean like I'm not the one to make the decision here. So just having to deal with that on a constant basis, contractors trying to push over on me, contractors literally calling me a little girl, individual tradesmen just having no respect whatsoever. that was what I had to deal with on a daily basis, just on the road to opening. And you know, that kind of stuff, it didn't stop once you were open, because even when it came down to hiring people, you know, people would be like, why should I work for a brown woman? Like, you know, asking me silly questions like, can you even pay me? It was like, wow. Yeah.
And I didn't want to cut you off. I wanted you to get that all out so you could really, truly paint the picture for people. Because this is yet again another industry, right, where we're seeing some of the same trends. Like you said, you suffer from so many isms. I love the way you put that, because it was really across the board, right, in terms of you're really in it every single day, and it's a constant battle. And in a lot of instances, these things compound, right? So it's not like you deal with them at one time. You being that business owner, you're dealing with so much in any given situation at any given moment. So again, you stuck in there. I appreciate you sticking in there. This is a platform, again, Beyond Our Podcast. We want you to tell your story, but at the same time, we want to put you on that soapbox, elevate you, let you know you're doing amazing work. So, right, take a step back. You had this experience in New York. You decided to make a move. Tell us a little bit around that move. And I think your idea kind of morphed a little bit, right, into what you're doing right now. So could you share a little bit with the folks around moving the brewery from New York to where you are located now, and then what that evolved into with the Kiddo Ranch?
Yeah. So in New York, we had a license called the Farm Brewery license. And it was always my intention to get our ingredients from local farms. We even attempted to have our own garden in the courtyard of the brewery. But ultimately, there is no room to grow in New York unless you want to move like upstate, which I hate snow. So that wasn't going to happen. And it was always my intention to grow into having a farm, an actual farm. So the move to Texas was something that, you know, I had already foreseen. I didn't know if it was going to be Texas or Australia or California or back to Trinidad or St. Martin. I didn't know where it would be, but I knew that eventually we would have our own farm. We would have the ability to grow our own organic produce, because with the juice bar side of things, like after a while, the organic laws started to change. And, you know, from being able to substitute organic with inorganic without having to tell customers, and the number of allowed chemicals growing from 22 to now 44 chemicals being allowed in organic, including propylene glycol, which no one puts antifreeze in their body unless you're eating non-organic foods. That things like that being allowed in, that was just, it was against our business plan. It was against our model. So we knew that the only way we can control the product that we provide is by controlling the source. So moving to Texas was very important to us. One, because we felt like we would be welcomed here in Texas, because everyone out here is experimenting with beer and craft beverage. They want to grow. It's a very pioneer spirit state. So there's a lot of opportunity in Texas. That don't mean I want you to come here and crowd it up, but there's opportunity here in Texas that we felt like, you know, just from getting off the plane, we could breathe. Whereas in New York, we just felt stifled and squished and pushed out all at the same time every single day. So when we got here, we started looking for land and decided to make Kiddo Family Ranch a thing, where it would involve the whole family, because what we focus on at the ranch is education. We focus on self-education, unschooling. We focus on STEM and STEAM and productivity. So our education, our growth, our experimentation, our science projects are all for an endeavor, and the endeavor all feeds into Island to Island Brewery and House of Juice and Brooklyn Jun Brew, and to the products that we make. And we just wanted to showcase that entire, you know, process from seed to spirit. I call it the seed to spirit experience. We wanted to be able to show that and give that to the world, as opposed to just keeping it to ourselves.
Thanks for that explanation there, Dan. We actually got somebody up. Farm Life, love it. So those are some of my folks who are here in the South. You kind of mentioned, moving from that city environment to you're talking about land, you're talking about fresh air, new opportunity for you guys for sure. And then that kiddo ranch, like you said, Brooke even chiming in. Appreciate you chiming in, Brooke. Always appreciate that support there. I'm curious to know, like you mentioned, the STEM focus. For some folks, they may or may not know science, technology, engineering, and math. Can you break down what the STEAM is for folks as well?
Oh, that's inclusive art communication. So a lot of people don't know STEAM, so we always say STEM because that's what people recognize. But really, the focus is STEAM, where it's science, technology, engineering, arts, communication, and mathematics. And the reason why STEAM is important is because without art, art is communication. It's how we connect with one another and share information, whether it's visual or literary or musically, or auditory, I should say. So without art, we can't communicate science. Without art, we can't draw new designs that we engineer in order to create new technology. Without communications, we can't develop new mathematical equations to communicate them to other people to solve problems. So it's important that we look at STEAM holistically, because also within arts communication, there is mental health support, because that's where you get to be expressive and you get to come up with new ideas. And if we ignore that, then we just got robots. And I don't know, but as a human being, I haven't figured out how to be a robot. So,
I ain't mad at you saying that. We got a lot of robots around here. Yes, and like you said, I don't want to be a robot either. So that art piece is, like you said, I think it goes over. It goes kind of unnoticed or under the radar sometimes. And I think now, just with where we're at, we're such a technology-driven society. We all have our phones. We have these devices, and there's like they're almost attached to us all the time. And so completely understand you. And it's very bold for you to kind of flip things back a little bit and say, where are the arts? And like you mentioned music, you mentioned great artists who paint stuff. My paintings are in the back. They're not that good, probably, guys, but
they're
it is
beautiful.
what it is. Thank you. Live, laugh, love. So I appreciate you putting some of that in the air with the Kiddo Ranch, growing from the, just island to island brewery into that. So I want to dig a little bit into your experience as an entrepreneur, some of those pains that you may have overcome. Like, what's something that you wish you would have known coming into being an entrepreneur that you wish you could have took back, time machine, Back to the Future, and hopped in the DeLorean to make yourself, just that much more prepared at this point in your entrepreneur journey?
How to navigate the industry, really. I wish I would have known how to better navigate the industry when I started. I've said this before, like a lot of times when you sit down and you're like, oh, I wish I would have known, is really hard to answer, because I am only where I'm at because I didn't know. I only developed into the person and the business owner that I am because I didn't know the status quo. I did things really off the cuff. I did things really innovatively. Like when people look at me, they're like, you're funky, you're weird, you're different. You don't know your place. And I don't know my place. I don't know the rules. I just know that I have an idea and I need to manifest this idea. So when I look back, it's like, what do I wish I'd known? It's hard to say that I wish I would have known those things, because then I might have just been like everybody else. But at the same time, dealing with certain pains and certain traumas now, almost like 8 years later, I kind of wish I knew how to navigate the industry. I wish I knew that it was a racist, sexist industry. I wish I knew what was going on with women ahead of time, because then I would have just avoided it. I wouldn't have been here at all. I wouldn't be sitting here taking these blows.
That's real. I appreciate that real perspective. And you touched on something on the front end of your answer around, you don't ever want to say like, hey, if I could go back and redo these things, because you learn throughout the process. But like you said, that's a lot of blows to take. Again, appreciate you for that. You mentioned those isms at the beginning. Those isms are constant. And again, I always tell people when things start to compound, that can be a lot to deal with. So within that, though, one of the learning experiences that I know we touched on, you just mentioned it a little bit around navigating the industry. Talk a little bit around like the business, the financial side of running a brewery, because you have some really interesting perspective around what it takes truly to get up and running and be a successful brewery.
Like financially?
Yeah, financial.
That one is hard. That one is really hard. Like a lot of people's story when they open a brewery is, oh, I was home brewing, or I was brewing out of my garage and everybody loved my stuff, or I won a couple of competitions and everyone told me I should start a brewery, and people start a brewery. And that's like their story. That's the very typical story in craft beers. I was home brewing and people said I should start one, or I worked in corporate America, made all this money, and I was so bored and needed purpose in my life. Those are the typical stories that you hear. And those stories come from having access to capital and having a heritage that allows you to ask friends and family for assistance. It allows you to have access to funding without any sort of foundation. And this is something that like I've felt for a while and got confirmation on. So I'm sort of like dealing with it in real time, and you're witnessing that. Witness my tragic moment.
We're here with you, Danii. We got to go through it. As you're talking though, I can think too. Just recently I've seen a couple. Some studies. I'm a number data guy, and it shows the idea of like people say like, oh, you could just go to your friends and family. We've actually had founders come up here and share their story, and some of them did use their friend and family around. But there's been a couple studies lately to show like, hey, if you go to your immediate family, what's your immediate family's kind of net worth? When you look at minority families, specifically, African American, Latino, you're probably talking about $20,000 or less in terms of like net worth, like worth. Like we're not talking money in the bank, we're talking about what they're worth. Versus, white families were probably pushing, well over 100,000. So there is some means to, hey, Danii, you come to me and you need me to cut you a check. It may not be a blank check, but I feel like I can give you a good amount. There isn't really, the numbers have shown that that's just not the case in our communities. We don't have the extra dollar a lot of times. So what you're saying is, I hear that, and I want to say that and this is why I appreciate you sharing your story, because for people that look like us, that usually isn't the story for us, where, like you said, like, hey, man, I just had some extra money. I was able to retire early. These discussions haven't really necessarily happened in our community this open yet. And I'm hoping, just through 2020 and all the things that we've been through, we start to have more conversations like this, where you as a business owner, you're sharing your story. People got to listen. They got to open up their ears. We got a few listeners in right now. People got to really open up their ears just to understand like what goes into having a business, no matter the industry, right? But in yours in particular, you have that expertise. It's not easy. And that friend and family, I'm almost nauseous at the idea of hearing. I've seen on social media and things like that where founders that look like us, when we go to people and ask for money, they say, hey, why don't you try that friend and family around? The data shows we don't have that as an option. That is not an option, right?
Yeah, that's not an option. Like I did go to friends and family, but friends and family can get you but so much. And the business that I'm in, it's not the kind of business where you take an initial startup and then you start building a profit on that. It's manufacturing business. A lot of people forget that craft beer is manufacturing. It's not retail. And there are equipment that needs to be purchased. There's technology that's rapidly changing. We are making innovations. We are making discoveries like overnight. Every year, the technology is just leveling up. And it's allowing people to make more, make faster. And if you can't get an initial investment to get you that kind of equipment, you are automatically at a disadvantage in this industry, any product manufacturing industry, because as a person of color, you're trying to enter an industry that got started during the Industrial Revolution, when people like you were not welcomed in the country. Like my family wasn't welcomed in the country at that time. And so there's people who are building on generational wealth and generational knowledge of manufacturing, where their great grandparent worked a factory, and then, eventually managed a factory, and then eventually partnered in a factory, and then eventually owned a factory. And these are some things that, like, I realized I didn't know before. I didn't know how much and how influential having a heritage in something is, until I just started going through this recent change in my life. But financially, I just recently got confirmation that based on what you look like, you don't need to have your shit together to get access to capital. And I've been working my whole life to get my shit together, to be perfect, to have my numbers on point, to have my words on point, to have my writing on point. And then seeing that there are other people out there who could just be like, I'm going to say a couple words, I'm going to pitch, I'm not going to have none of that stuff, get access immediately. Like, that's what the financial side of this business is what do you look like and who do you know? Do you have friends and family with a $250,000 net worth? Because if you need to raise $1 million, you need to know people whose net worth is $250,000. Right? So if you need to raise $2 million, you need to know people who have $500,000 net worth. And if it's like other institutions that will give you money, that are designed to give people money to invest, they don't trust you if you don't have the network. So they're not looking at your worth as a person, as an individual. They're not looking at your business plan. They're not looking at your idea. They're not looking at market viability. They're not looking at your market research. They're looking at who trusts you and do you have the right people around you? And right people means right money. That's what that shit comes down to. And in this business, you're talking about sunken costs. This entire business is sunken investment that you cannot hope to make a profit on right away. This is something that you got to build, right? You got to get your systems in place. You got to get your equipment in place. The technology industry, the technology side of it has to cool down. Consumer expectations have to cool down. Like right now, consumer expectations are on a weekly trend, where everything, clothing, makeup, food, drink is all fast casual. Like we are entering a new paradigm in our society where everything is like, what's the new beer coming out? What you doing this week? What you doing that week? And it's like, whoa, hold up. Like we follow the seasons. We don't have a new beer on a weekly basis. But that's what people want. And if you don't have that, consumers become disinterested or disengaged. So there's like a brewery here in Texas. They literally have a new release every single week with new art, new packaging every single week. And you can't imagine what the speed to market, turnaround, disposable art, disposable product cycle is, and the stress that creates because of what's going on right now, and not being able to control the source of your food, the source of your ingredients, and being forced to turn to chemicals. All of that plays into what you can do starting on the financials, because if something changes can you switch your systems up? If the answer is no, you need to keep up with what you have, then that reflects your ability to earn a profit in real time.
Breaking it down. I appreciate you giving that perspective on the industry. That's crazy. Like a new beer a week is pretty that's pretty insane.
It is.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. So you know, I want to. You said some great things there, so I'm trying to figure out where we can take this. So you got a lot. You got a lot going. Yeah, you just long story short, you got a lot going on. I wanted to talk through the idea, like you mentioned, some of the trauma that you've gone through, the isms, like you mentioned. I know you recently kind of made a switch of focus to making sure like you take time away, you do recharging. Can you tell the folks a little bit around your philosophy around that, dealing with like how do you cope with some of these isms and some of this trauma that you have to consistently deal with as an entrepreneur in your space? Like tell the folks a little bit around your recent break, and then kind of how you think about entrepreneurship in terms of recharging and not maybe succumbing to some of the pressures.
As an entrepreneur, I don't know how to not succumb to the pressures. That's something that I'm currently on the journey for. So I have to get back to you on that one. But in terms of recognizing and assessing, I don't think that I recognized my burnout soon enough. It just kind of slammed into me when I realized that as much success as I was having, I felt nothing. I did not feel successful. I did not feel like I was making any breakthroughs. I did not feel like I was moving the dial. And I just stopped one day and meditated on it. And I realized that my cup was so empty that it was cracked and leaking, because I was giving and giving and giving and giving and giving to people around me and receiving nothing. Like there are people who will say, Danii, I support you. And I'm like, okay, well, what does support look like? And from a lot of people, support was just them typing words on a screen that said, I support you, and nothing else. And just seeing those words over and over while looking at the bank account, while looking at who's buying tickets to come to events, while looking at how I feel after I put on an event or do something for the public. You know, I did an event last year where I helped a brewery have their busiest day since they've been open outside of a private event. And tons of people from the industry came out for that event. The press came out. We got media coverage. And I think that it helped them. And they acknowledged it. They acknowledged that I brought value to their business. And when I asked them for a donation, when COVID had shut everything down and people were in great need, the owner basically told me that he needed to talk to his lawyer before he could give me $50. And he never spoke to me again. And I have so many stories like that where like I just been doing work for businesses and organizations and not getting paid and being pushed out or being told that I'm an embarrassment to their company. My cup was cracked and I was leaking the support that I felt I needed and not receiving. I recognized pain, I recognized abuse, I recognized sexism, I recognized bullying. I recognized all these things. And so, as a way to cope, I think I was just giving to people in my industry who were trying to make it. But
I appreciate you, Danii. Yeah, I don't want to cut you off, but I definitely appreciate you giving that perspective. Like you said, it's not easy, and I think there comes a point, right? Like you said, in terms of that support, there's got to be this two-way street in terms of building people up, and that's really what this podcast is for an entrepreneur like yourself to be vulnerable with us. That's amazing. Like, people need to really understand like what goes into running your own business. You're in an industry where there's not many people that look like you. There's not many people that look like me and you, but you're pushing through. You're figuring out ways. And I think moving forward, I'm hoping, my hope is that a business like yours, the support that you need, a lot of times is going to be people, supporting in different ways. There's different ways that people can support. Like you said, there's putting words on the screen, but then there's truly that support mechanism that we have in our communities. And when you think about support, that could be, pushing the product, telling people about it, purchasing. Like, there's different ways, or even just being, lending an ear to you as a business owner when you're figuring out, how to tackle your business next. And so there's different ways that people can support. But I appreciate you, giving that perspective around the industry that you're in, because, everybody is not going to be there to support you truly when you look at that definition of what support means for you. So my next question, I want to dig just a little bit more, like, moving forward, how do you protect your energy, what you give? Like you said, that cup that you have with so much to give, like, how do you protect your energy from those types of experiences moving forward?
I'm in the middle of it. You seek therapy, meditate, practice discernment. When the writing's on the wall, pay attention to it. I just abruptly ended, or I didn't end, an organization that I was dealing with just kicked me out. And looking back, the writing was on the wall, but I was too stubborn and too tenacious and too driven to see the writing, to read it. I just figured, okay, yeah, the writing's on the wall, but they said that they want to change. So I just have to be strong and be present so that they can get from point A to point B. And protecting your energy means when the writing's on the wall, you scram, you turn, and you run in the complete opposite direction. And some people will say that, like, that's not good because you need to build relationships. You can't burn bridges. Mm-hmm. But you know what? In the face of institutional racism, like, when someone will support the oppressor and say that they have every right to oppress because it's their prerogative, you can't change that. You can't change that. So when the writing is on the wall, you turn tail and run the other direction. Like, running a social focused business, you still have to look at business markers. You still have to look at ROI. You still have to look at the numbers. And when the numbers suggest that what you're dealing with, there's no hope for it to change, you turn tail and you run the other direction. And my problem is, I tried too hard to run a social business and not look at the numbers and say, oh, okay, well, there's not 5% people like me present. There's 5. Mm-hmm. 5. So in a situation like that, I can't make change. And so to protect my energy, what I have done recently is just taking a break. I cut myself off from social media. So, people haven't seen or heard from me in a minute. I stopped with the email because email is full of triggers. I get hundreds of emails a day, and I get a lot of requests from institutions that are like, "You're Black. We want to do something with you." And it's like, what the fuck? Like, have you ever worked
Buzzword
with a
now.
brown person before? I was just contacted by a brewery in the Northeast, and they were like, "Yeah, we want to collab with you." I'm like, "Cool. What is your budget? Like, what did you plan on paying me?" They're like, "Oh, we had no plans to pay you. We wanted to donate the whole thing to charity." And it's like, what? Like, you want me to work for you for free so that you can look good to say that you worked with a person of color? Like a gentleman said on one of your podcasts previously, like, this is a business. Like, we're here to do business. So first we're going to talk business, and when we talk business, you need to have your numbers together. Cuz I'm not sitting here doing this for free. This is not charity. This is my business.
I love that, Danii. You just gave me chills. That was that boss talk, like you said, and I don't know if you know it yet because you're really in the moment, but you're like the way that you were like you're going through this, and you just dropped so many gems in like the last 2-3 minutes. Like I kid you not, but I can tell like you're figuring it out, but you're figuring out how to do it your way, and I think that's like very important for people to remember. Like you're gonna go through these experiences, and you're gonna evolve. In your case, you're in a situation where there is no precedent. Like you said, instead of saying, "Oh, there's 5% of the industry that's like me," there's 5. Like you said, you put up that one finger. There's 5 people in your industry that you can say, "Okay, there, I can relate to." That's it. That's an entire industry. You're talking about billions of dollars. I know the beer industry alone is probably 20-30 billion by itself, and then you talk about some of the other elements of your business as well. You're on an island a lot of times, so but I can tell you're in it right now. But I can definitely tell just the way that you talk through that, like how you're evolving, and I can't wait to see at the end of this where you feel like you got it, like what your business is going to look like, because I know it's going to be incredible. But with that being said, I want to know, you taking your experiences, like what are you looking to champion for 2021, for the rest of 2021?
This is a hard question because I had this whole big plan for 2021 with my seat on the board of a women's organization in beer. And it was about being present and engaged with community and really listening to people's voices and meeting them where they were at to give them what they needed and create pathways for them. That was my original plan, to create pathways for women and people of color who wanted to enter an industry with their profession, and also to protect them. And I'm mentioning it because I think that it's a great idea. I think that it's an important idea. I think it's a missing link. We're trying to bring people in, but we have to support them at the opposite end where they're leaving. So the numbers for women in my industry have not changed, not because women are not coming in, but women are coming in and just as quickly going out. We just lost 2 microbiologists, intelligent women in my industry, to sexual harassment. They're just gone. They're not they didn't change their job. They just left the industry because they were sexually harassed at work. And that's it. Nothing happened. It just came down to them leaving. No one was taken to court. Human rights violations were not addressed. Labor law violations were not addressed. So many women are told that they can't do a job because of their size, or they can't get paid because they're a woman. These are things that you watch television, you're like, yo, this is shit from like 1920. Why are we dealing with this in 2020? Why is it that a woman can't go to work and not worry about her body not being violated? So my plan for 2021 was to create pathways towards professionalism and advocacy to support women who were dealing with these issues. But I received a very loud message from, thank you, Brooke, from Pink Boots, that they ain't interested in that. They don't want to support women. They don't want to advocate for women. Their mission is to assist, inspire, encourage. It was to educate. Now it's to advance. They don't want to provide assistance. They don't want to inspire. They don't want to encourage. They refused me education. Like when I asked for education, they were like, "You're not entitled to that."
I appreciate you. I appreciate you giving that perspective, and Brooke chiming in as well. Brooke, as our sponsor, she calls it how she sees it, and I love that about her being our partner, because she will call people out, no hesitation. So you guys using this platform, that's what this platform is for. Kimberly, again, thank you for chiming in. She just said, she's completely coming out on top with this. Like you said, this is you just giving that perspective. Then you're painting the picture for people, whether it's good or bad, right? People need to really hear this, right?
Yeah.
They need
and
to
this is going on in multiple industries. It's not just beer.
Exactly.
This is happening in entertainment. It's happening in comedy. It's happening in cannabis. Women are being raped in the fields. Forget for a substance that people of color are currently still in jail for. Women are being raped on the farms where people of European descent are profiting from something that little Black boys are still in jail, growing up in jail for. Like, that is what's going on in industry. And I'm just coming from the microcosm of beverage production.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I look at what I want to do for 2021, part of me feels like I don't really have a choice on what to do. I need to keep myself from cracking. I need to keep my sanity. I have 2 children that I homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with my children 24 hours a day. I don't get the opportunity to go cry in a closet somewhere. I don't get the drive home or the train ride home to get my thoughts together. I'm always with them. So I have to always be on for my kids. And so that means that I can't take these blows that I used to take when I was younger. I can't sit here and take these isms and just be like, "Oh, I'm tough. I'm strong. I can deal." No, I can't deal with it. I can't. So what I'm doing for 2021 right now, minute by minute, is taking it minute by minute. Like yesterday, I was sat down at the computer. I'm like, okay, I got this podcast. Let me check my email, see if Kenny got any messages for me.
Mm-hmm.
Breathe. Hopefully there's no triggers in my inbox.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, there was triggers. There was triggers in my inbox, everywhere. I got an email from someone who was like, it's people's prerogative to do what they want to do. And I'm like, institutional racism supported. That's the excuse. Like if someone says that it's okay for someone to be biased against you in the workplace, that is supporting the oppressor. Like if you give them license to do what they want to do in that way, then you're basically saying that we can be biased to whomever we want to be biased to, because that's our prerogative. That's our right. It's a private institution, yada, yada, yada. There's 5 of me in the industry, 10,000 others. Therefore, we have the support for institutional racism. And since, we're now seeing the backlash of 2020, people trying to be more diverse, I have no plan for 2021 except get my mental health in order, unpack what I've been dealing with for the last 8 years, and make sure that I am on for nobody but my children, because I don't want my kids looking at themselves in the mirror and being like, "Oh, I can't do something because my mom is cracking because she tried to do it and look at what's happening to her." Like,
that's that legacy.
Yeah.
Right, what you're speaking to right there, Danny, and you're definitely paving that way. for them to be able to look at the things that you're doing and learning and just appreciating you putting that time and energy in for sure. So outside of championing, the items that you want to champion for the year, like you said, your mental space is the most important for you right now. Taking that a little bit further, thinking about the business, Island to Island Brewery and the much bigger initiative with the Kiddo Ranch, along with Beers Giving. What does success look like for a year like 2021, where you're focusing on your mental, and you also know that you're still trying to build out, the Island to Island brewery to some extent? What does that success look like for you?
If you asked me this question a month ago, success, I would have answered as building back up my revenues. 2020 was a mud ass of a year. I lost all my revenues in all my companies in 2020. So I would have told you that success for me in 2021 would have looked like building back up my revenues. Now, a month later, because February was a mother ass of a month, excuse me, felt like a year. And I spoke to so many people who, for February 2021, everybody is just like, what the hell just happened? And then hell froze over in February. So many people I spoke to, just they didn't know what was going on for themselves in their life. And we experienced what's called a stellium, excuse me, where we had like 8 planetary bodies line up, and everybody was just going through it. And then hell froze over in southern United States of America, and we were driving on ice. And so now, revenue is not even my focus. Do I want to make money? Yeah, of course I want to make money. That's what you're in business to do. But if you're making money and you're in and out of Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, rehab, what's that worth?
There's a cost.
So yeah. So for me, success looks like not turning to the bottle, not seeking pills, not ending up in a mental institution. That's what success looks like for me as a high-paced business owner working in the alcohol industry, mind you. Success looks like navigating this new normal at my own pace, not the pace that's set for me, because I can't keep up. I can't keep up from a financial perspective. I can't keep up from a mainstream perspective. I have to step back and be more of an artist for this year and less of a business person, and just do me. Just create in a way that no one else on this planet can create, and hope that at the end of the year, I have something that I can offer to the world that the world sees value and will pay for. Because I tell you now, support, ladies and gentlemen, is not you saying you support. In business, support is paying for something, paying for a product, paying for someone's work, paying for someone's expertise, paying for the value that they bring to your life, paying for the thing that you want to take from them. That's what support is in business. So for me, success is really just being okay with doing me and not answering to anybody else. Because the moment I start doing for someone else or answering to someone else, that's when my cup starts to crack again.
You heard it from the best, ladies and gentlemen. That's what support is. Like, that's what the platform is, right? We gotta allow founders to come up here, share their story like you've done, Danii. And then, at the end of it, in terms of what that support looks like, it's great that that how to define that support right now, going through all the stuff that you've gone through. So again, like you said, it's purchasing whatever that value is you feel like somebody brings to your life, like the products that you bring to your customers. There's a specific value that's tied to that, and so you want to get compensated the right way. There ain't nothing wrong with that. right? And so we got to hear more and more of that, right? No handouts. The examples you gave is crazy. No donations, no charity. We got businesses over here. So excited to see you go attack the rest of the year, along with focusing on your mental. I commend you for that, because after a year like 2020, some of us probably need to. I'm doing a lot of that now, focus on that mental. We want to make money, like you said, but there's cost to doing some of those things when you're just not right in your life. So again, appreciate all the perspective. Tell people how they can reach out, stay connected with the brand, even buy some product. Like how can folks support?
Really and truly, you can become a Patreon of Danii Oliver Patreon, DaniiOliver.com. You can book a company or society event at the ranch, or like a personal business retreat at the ranch. For that, you would email us, info@kiddofamilyranch.com. I'm going to be putting out some tours soon, once I feel like I can have a conversation with people and not break down crying. And, tell a friend to check us out. If you know people who would be interested in the things that I talked about today, just, of course, follow the socials, so that as soon as I got something to say, something to share, you're aware of it in real time. And remember that support is not typing the words, "I support you."
I appreciate that, Dan. I think that's the lasting note. Outside of that, I'll give it to you one more time. It sounds like you did your mic drop moment, but just in case, is there anything you want folks to leave this conversation with? We got plenty of viewers right now, in terms of, what's that one takeaway? That one takeaway, you shared a lot with us. You mentioned support a few times. What's that one takeaway you want people to keep in their mind as we go into the weekend and we continue through 2021?
Don't ask a business professional of color to do something for you if you're not prepared to pay them.
You heard it loud and clear, ladies and gentlemen. I ain't gonna add nothing to it. Again, I appreciate Danii for giving this perspective. You were so honest with us. I appreciate all the honesty, all the, you really opening up and sharing your story with us. It hasn't been easy, but definitely looking forward to what you build out with the Island to Island Brewery. I'll definitely be, whenever I'm in Texas, I'll actually be in Texas this year. I'll be reaching out to get some products for sure. You can count on my support, as in dollars, to pay for the product. But again, with the Kiddo Ranch, just the STEM focus that you got going on. Thanks, Kim, for chiming in. Several mic drops throughout the entire episode. Appreciate it. We definitely love it. And on the last note, thanks everybody for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast. We can be streamed across all major streaming platforms, in addition to YouTube. Come back again.